Any? Andy, Bennett, and Abraham there. No, and Andy Bennett. Josh, hi.
For the Lambeth group, and it was consisted of 4 graphic designers and 3 3D designers. We've got Fraser here, he was in graphics, and Annie was graphics, DJ was 3D, we've got Josh over here which was graphics, Adele 3D, and Alex 3D as well. Okay, so why did we join the project? It was an opportunity to work on a live brief. It was an opportunity to work with young students that obviously is quite a challenge in itself. As I know, us as students are quite difficult to work with each other, so yeah. It was also an opportunity to work with obviously Sorrell and the creatives and people that actually work in the industry, and the feedback we got from them was very helpful. So it was a good experience. So the brief we were actually given, I'll just briefly read it. This is the brief of the Young Design Programme 2010 Lambeth College group. To improve the identity of Lambeth College and the way it communicates to the target market, by looking at promotional material on the college logo, the college website, and the advertising and the college card. So basically how we approached this was quite difficult because as graphic designers, we saw it as a very graphic brief, whereas the 3Ders weren't quite sure where they were going to fit into this role, because obviously it seemed very print-based media type stuff. So that was quite difficult to try and get them enthusiastic and try and keep together as a team and work well. So basically we had like a group brainstorm, we decided who was good at what and who should take which roles, which was very important as the process went on to know who was good at what and who should speak, etc. We visited the college twice, which was also very helpful to get feedback from the students. And obviously we had the blog as well, but I'm not sure if the students knew about the blog straight away or whether they weren't able to contribute at the start, but it would have been slightly more helpful if the communication had been kept open, which is obviously something we've learned, that the communication needs to continually happen almost every day to make sure what you're doing is correct, because as we'll talk about later on, we went with the approach. Our concept was creativity and identity, and we went in with the avatar approach, character. And as we went along with that for a good couple of weeks, we then spoke to the students and they didn't like it. So had we communicated better, we wouldn't have wasted that time. But we'll go into more detail about that shortly. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Alex to talk about how we started.
Okay, what we thought originally, we had a look at, we did some research on with your website, your prospectus, all your current branding, and we got the impression that it was very inconsistent with the colour palette, the use of images, and it didn't really give you a very clear sense of identity, and that's what we wanted to give you. It didn't reflect your Ofsted report. You got a very, very good Ofsted report. And we wanted to make sure that your branding would convey a message of this, that Lambeth was a good place to go to. So we decided that we were going to try and improve this for you. And I'm going to pass back to Hannah to why we rebranded.
So why rebrand? It was basically, obviously, if you rebrand, that becomes quite a big issue for any company or educational institute. There's a lot of things need redoing. So we decided that we try and justify why we were going to do that. And if you remember in our very first meeting, we gave you a different presentation about why you needed to change certain things, because your current branding, your current examples don't really demonstrate all the things that are good about Lambeth. You're diverse, you're very exciting, you're quite an energetic college, you've got this great new building, but all of your identity in the minute, all of your websites, all your ID cards, or whatever, everything about your college seems almost to be stuck a few years ago, you know, almost in the late 90s with the way everything looks. Everything looks slightly amateurish, nothing quite runs together. All the colours are all over the place, all the logos are sort of, well, I'll say bad, I was going to say bad. So we thought if we try and bring that into the contemporary world, if we try and make it match your building, if we try and make it match everything about you, then this would be quite a good way to make sure that when new students arrive, that all the previous thoughts about what they might have heard about Lambeth are taken away from them, a sort of fresh start for a new building. So we sort of made these 3 sort of core values which we thought summed up your college and everything about it. So you've got individuality, which is obviously a college is where you go, although you're part of this big organisation, it's where you begin to sort of stamp your authority on who you are and around you. So although you're still a student, you're no longer just such and such in the back of the class. You are you. You start to have your own identity, tutors start to know things about you, they start to build the way they teach around you. Revelation. One of obviously the brilliant things about college and education is that moment where after maybe weeks and months of struggling with an idea, you finally get a few seconds where it all makes sense and suddenly everything that before was confusing suddenly slots into place and you finally get everything. So that was revelation. And creativity. Although your college does not just do art, it seems to us that basically everything that your college teaches features creativity in some way. If you've ever tried to do plumbing or mend a car, then there's obviously an awful lot of creativity involved in that. So we thought that we would bring that into the identity as well, and it's also just a bit exciting for us to have. So, any kind of highlights?
So, yeah, one of the main things we felt we had to start from and change at the same time was the color palette, because it's obviously something that is in every aspect, in the card, the prospectus and everything. So it was some kind of the starting point we decided to have. The one you see on your left is the one that you have currently at the moment, and basically from the feedback we got from the students, it was kind of hard to combine something that worked and at the same time something that they liked. So we thought both keeping in mind the core values and both obviously aesthetic values, we just ended up with that color palette which you see after in the final project anyway, which is something bright, something new, something that kind of stands out and not very I don't know, just a bunch of colors together, which make sense somehow, but are distractive on the other hand. So yeah, I'm not wasting that much time about the colors. 3 years?
Yeah.
I'm a 3D designer. Basically, what it was essentially, like Hannah said, we came up with the idea of having avatars, and you saw in the core brand values. Identity was one of them, so we thought what would be a better way to represent yourself than an avatar, something that you can personalize to make like you and essentially just represent you on the screen. And we thought essentially have it spread throughout the prospectus, the identity card, and various other pieces that represent the college. We started with a few different concepts. This is the first one, which was done by
these are some initial sketches, and a model we tried to. This wasn't one of our original models, but we did try to modify this one to try and get the same kind of look. But we were trying to make. With the feedback we got, you wanted a more realistic style and a more anime style as well, which is was a bit. It's difficult with the non-proportionality of it, and so that brings us on to.
Yeah, we sort of came onto more of this sort of style, which is a bit more realistic looking. We have some proportions which are a little bit abnormal, but we that's the sort of thing they would like. But after a meeting with them, they decided they didn't really like this sort of look, and we decided to scrap that. So we ditched that idea and tried to integrate 3D elements into various other parts of the project. You'll see later on, we've got a bit of 3D in the logo, we've done a 3D logo, we've got a bit of 3D poster. We're just trying to basically try and get our own field within the rest of it, because we found that graphic designers were more used to sort of branding and of a company and whatnot. And we just thought we'd try and get our own discipline into it and try and basically become part of the group. And so, like I said, we ditched that idea and just moved on from that basically. Next, Tokyo sketches.